Let me ask you a question. If you had to rank the things you do for your health in order of how much impact they actually have on your results, could you do it? You see, most people cannot, and that's not a failure, but it's because the fitness industry has spent decades blurring the lines. Everything gets marketed as equally important. Your steps, your gym sessions, your meal plan, your cardio, your strength training, peptides, your sleep, your supplements, all of it is presented as crucial all the time. But that's not how the body actually works. Some things matter more than others, and when you don't know what those things are, you spend energy in the wrong priorities, and you wonder why the results aren't coming. So here's what I've learned coaching thousands of people, men and women, over the last 18 years. The people who get results are not the ones working the hardest. They're the ones working on the right things in the right order. You see, a guy grinding through an hour of HIIT every day while eating in a massive deficit and sleeping 5 hours a night, he's not going to build muscle. And a woman doing everything right, except she's got her priorities backwards, will plateau and get frustrated and quit. Because it's not about effort, it's about the hierarchy. So today I'm going to give you 2 clear science-backed hierarchies for both fat loss and muscle growth. 2 different goals, 2 different priority stacks, and I'm going to show you why the order matters as much as the actions themselves. And this applies whether you're male or female. The physiology is the same, the hierarchy is the same, the priorities are the same. This isn't my opinion, this is basic physiology. So let me show you how it works. The first thing we're going to dive into is the fat loss hierarchy. So tier 1 is nutrition. It's non-negotiable. If you're trying to lose fat, this is where your energy goes first, not second. Not after you've nailed your training, but first. Nutrition is the single most powerful lever for fat loss because it's the only one that directly controls your energy balance in your body. So your caloric intake determines whether you're in a deficit, in a surplus, or at maintenance. Your body composition, which is your body weight, your body fat percentage, and your muscle mass, all of that flows from this number first. And research consistently shows that combining higher protein intake with resistance training during a caloric restriction acts synergistically on muscle protein synthesis, so allowing you to build muscle. So what that means in plain language is when you're losing fat, the protein protects your muscle and allows you to build. So the deficit creates the fat loss, the training signals your body to keep the muscle, so all 3 matter, but the deficit is the engine for fat loss. So the simple truth that most people don't want to hear is you can lose body fat through nutrition alone without ever setting foot in a gym or doing cardio. And you cannot lose body fat through exercise alone if your nutrition is not in a deficit. This is where most people will get it wrong. They think, I'm just going to exercise more, but you can't outwork out a bad diet. That asymmetry tells you everything about why this lever matters most. I've seen men lose significant fat in 3 months because they nailed their nutrition and went to the gym twice a week. And I've seen women spinning their wheels for a year because they're training 5 days a week but eating too much. The body does not care how hard you train. It cares about the math. So here's what this looks like in practice. A sustainable calorie deficit, not aggressive, not starving yourself, but sustainable. Something you can live in for months, not something you're white knuckling through for 2 weeks before you quit, is the biggest needle mover. We need to be in a deficit if we want to lose fat. The next thing is we need to prioritize protein at 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. So this is consistent for men and women. If you weigh 180 pounds, you're eating 126 to 180 grams of protein a day. This is what protects your muscle while you lose fat. The next thing is taking an 80-20 approach. This is, in my opinion, you need to hit your calories and protein 80% of the time. The other 20%, you can be flexible. You can eat a meal you enjoy, go out on date night, have a cocktail. You can go out with your friends, have the cake, pancakes, donuts with your kids, but you're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be consistent. And if you aim for 100% consistency, that's not sustainable and you will quit. So that is the foundation of everything. Everything else just builds on top of it. Now, tier 2 is daily movement and cardio. This is considered the multiplier. This is where most people get confused because they think cardio is the main event of fat loss, and it's not. It's the multiplier. And here's why walking matters more than most people realize. Research from the Mayo Clinic shows that NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is just a fancy way of saying the energy you burn throughout daily movements outside of structured exercise, can differ by up to 2,000 calories between people of similar body sizes. So think about that. 2,000 calories. That's the difference between losing fat and staying the same. And it's not from the gym, it's just from walking, it's from standing, it's from moving throughout the day. So increasing your daily steps from 5,000 to 10,000 can burn an extra 200 to 250 calories per day. And here's the key part. Unlike structured cardio, high daily movement does not interfere with your strength training recovery. So walking does not cost you anything in terms of recovery. It just adds to your output of calories. So this is why I tell people to build their step count first, not because steps are magic, but because they are a low cost, low cortisol, and they add up across every waking hour. So one study found that 1 hour of daily exercise cannot compensate for the negative effects of inactivity on insulin levels and plasma lipids for the rest of the day if you spend it sitting. So what that means is if you're sedentary all day, and then you go to the gym for an hour, you don't fully offset the metabolic damage of being still for the other 23 hours. But if you're walking, if you're standing, if you're moving throughout the day, even without formal exercise, your metabolism stays elevated, your insulin sensitivity stays better, your body composition can shift. So let's talk about structured cardio because there are 3 main types and they're not all created equal when it comes to fat loss. The first is zone 2 cardio. This is a low to moderate intensity conversational pace. So if you're on the treadmill, if you're on the stepper, if you're out walking in the mountains, you can have a whole conversation with somebody next to you. So this can be sustained for 30 to 60 minutes. Think of this as incline walking, cycling at a comfortable pace, maybe easy rowing or swimming. Your heart rate stays roughly between 60 to 70% of your maximum. Now, the pros of this are it's low cortisol impact. It doesn't compromise your muscle or recovery. It burns fat as a primary fuel source. It builds your cardiovascular health and it's sustainable long term. Now, the cons are it's considered a low calorie burn per unit of time compared to other high intensity work. And so it takes longer to produce significant output, but it's best for people who are already in a stressed state, maybe already have high cortisol. The season of life is really hectic. They're new to structured cardio. So this is the safest starting point for most people. So I especially recommend this for anyone in a high stress career, anyone dealing with life transitions, anyone whose cortisol is already running high. And honestly, that's most of us, especially if you're a parent, if you're building a business, if you're juggling life, that's all of us. The next form of cardio is high intensity interval training. So alternating bursts of high intensity effort with recovery periods. So think of sprint intervals or bike sprints, hit and hills rides, Tabata classes, or circuit style workouts where you're going hard for a period of time and then you stop. So the pros of this are they're very time efficient workouts. They burn significant calories in a short window and it creates an afterburn effect where your body continues to burn calories after your workout. Now, the cons are it creates a high cortisol output. It requires more recovery time. If it's overdone, and most people overdo it, it competes directly with your strength training for your body's recovery resources, and it can actually stall both fat loss and muscle building. So here's the thing, if you're already in a high stress career, if you're managing a lot of life demands, you're already not sleeping as much as you should, then adding HIIT on top of this is adding fuel to an already burning fire. It's not the best option. So this is best for people who have a solid training base, who have manageable stress levels, who are using it strategically once or twice per week, but not as the foundation of their exercise program. Now, the next form is steady state cardio. So this is moderate intensity sustained for a longer period. So think of a 45-minute run or an hour on the elliptical at a consistent pace. The pros are it's higher calorie burn than zone 2. So it's got a moderate cortisol impact. It's accessible and familiar for most people. Now the cons are it can interfere with muscle building if it's done at high volumes. It will increase your appetite for most people, which can undercut your deficit and make it harder to stay in it. So it could be a crutch that replaces addressing your nutrition. A lot of people will try and overdo cardio to compensate for the fact that they're not eating well, but that doesn't do the trick. As we talked about before, nutrition is the base. So this type of cardio is best for people who enjoy leisurely activities, if they consider it that, and use it as a tool among your other tools. So strength training, walking, all of that. But it shouldn't be the primary fat loss strategy. So my recommendation for most people is to build your step count first. Aim for 10,000 steps daily. This is the most sustainable, lowest cost way to increase your energy expenditure. Add in zone 2 cardio 2 to 3 times per week as your primary structured cardio. I personally don't usually encourage cardio more than twice per week, paired with a 3-day lifting plan, but this gives you the cardiovascular stimulus without burning through your recovery resources. Also, use HIIT sparingly and only when your stress levels are genuinely manageable and your sleep is solid. Now, tier 3 for fat loss is going to be strength training, and this is what I consider the protector. So here's why most people have it completely backwards. People cut their strength training and add cardio. This is exactly the wrong move. Studies show that caloric restriction decreases your muscle protein synthesis. So the loss of muscle during a calorie deficit is real and it's significant, and it's actually counterintuitive because if we're losing muscle while we're in a calorie deficit, what's happening is we're slowing our metabolism, we're making it harder to sustain the fat loss, and we make it easier to gain the weight back because our metabolism has slowed and the amount of calories that we burn at a baseline is now lower. So let me explain why this matters. Strength training is what sends the signal to your body that we need to keep this muscle. It's being used. When you're in a calorie deficit without strength training, your body breaks down muscle for fuel. So you'll lose both fat and muscle. And when you lose muscle, you lower your metabolic rate, the number of calories your body burns at rest. So if you lose 20 pounds, but 8 of those pounds are muscle, you've permanently lowered your metabolism. Your body now burns fewer calories just to exist, which makes the next fat loss attempt harder than the one that you just went through. So strength training during fat loss is what sends those signals to your body to build or maintain this muscle. Don't break it down. So more muscle means a higher resting metabolic rate. A higher resting metabolic rate means you burn more calories at rest, and that's the foundation of long-term sustainable fat loss. So for men, strength training during fat loss helps maintain your testosterone levels as well, which naturally declines slightly in a caloric deficit. So resistance training actually attenuates that decline and keeps it from happening. For women, especially those in perimenopause and menopause, strength training is critical for maintaining bone density and hormonal balance during fat loss. So muscles also support your insulin sensitivity, which becomes increasingly important as hormones start to shift as you get older. So the more muscle mass you have, the less likely you are to become insulin sensitive. But the fundamental principle is the same for everyone. We have to preserve muscle to lose fat, to maintain metabolism. So 3 to 4 sessions per week is fine. This is not optional, in my opinion. This is the mechanism that protects everything your nutrition is working to do. Now, the second hierarchy we're going to talk about is the muscle growth hierarchy. And the order shifts slightly, but it's pretty significant the way that it matters. So I want you to understand this. So when it comes to muscle growth, we have a dual engine. Nutrition and strength training work hand in hand. And I'm not going to rank those as 1 and 2 because they're genuinely codependent. Neither works without the other. They're a dual engine for muscle growth. And here's the mechanism. Strength training creates what is called muscle protein synthesis response in our body. So when you stress a muscle with progressive resistance or weightlifting, your body signals this tissue got damaged. We need to repair it and make it stronger than it was before. So we create these small micro tears and then our body builds back. That's the stimulus. That's what drives adaptation. That's what builds muscle. But here's the critical piece. The muscle protein synthesis response triggered by resistance training requires protein to be complete. So when you consume 30 grams of protein after resistance exercise results in a greater stimulation of muscle protein synthesis than just 15 grams. So without adequate protein available, the signal exists, but the building material isn't adequate. So the training creates the signal. We're tearing, we're creating stress on the muscle, but nutrition provides the material to build. So if you remove either one, the process stalls. So I've seen guys doing everything right in the gym, but they eat like they're trying to lose weight and they wonder why they're not gaining muscle. And I've also seen women eating 120 grams of protein, but only doing cardio, and they wonder why they look skinny fat and have no definition. So the signal without the material just leads to frustration and failure. So let's talk about what this looks like in practice. You need to be eating at or above maintenance calories, not in a deficit, to build substantial muscle efficiently. Building muscle requires a slight surplus or at minimum maintenance. Your body is building new tissue and it needs fuel. So you need 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight consistently. This is the same for men and women. If you weigh 200 pounds, you need to be eating 140 to 200 grams of protein daily. You need progressive overload in your training. This means you're consistently challenging the muscles with more weight, more reps, more difficulty over time, not just going through the motions, but actual progression. This is why people chronically under eating and doing a lot of cardio never build the visible muscle they want, and they don't look toned, because the training signal is there, but the nutrition is not. The engine has fuel, but it's only firing on one cylinder. So strength training has a very specific role. So even within the dual engine, strength training has a specific role that nutrition cannot replicate. It's training that tells your body which tissue to prioritize. So without that signal, nutrition alone doesn't know how to build muscle. It just provides energy. And if you are overeating from an energy perspective, but your body doesn't have any signals to use the energy with, then you put on weight. So progressive overload, strength training, is the mechanism. So it's not just lifting weights, it's progressively challenging the muscle over time. That's what drives the adaptation. That's what builds the visible muscle, the strong shoulders, the defined abs, and the athletic physique. That's why people who stick with lifting 5, 10, 15-pound weights for years and years and years never build muscle, because they're not creating that stimulus. So 3 to 4 sessions of lifting per week is all it takes. Compound movements with the foundation, with squats, deadlifts, presses, rows. These are the movements that build the most muscle, they engage the most tissue, and they create the most muscle and systematic growth. And progressive challenging, so building and lifting heavier over time, is what allows your muscles to build. So tier 3 when it comes to muscle growth is daily movement and cardio, and it's just a supporting role. So this is where it's important. Cardio and movement are healthy and necessary, but during a muscle building phase, they sit in a support role, not a primary role. And the reason is recovery. Your body has a finite capacity to recover from physical stress. So when you're doing a lot of heavy strength training, 3 to maybe 5 times per week, that recovery capacity is being used up to build muscle. So excessive cardio, especially high intensity cardio, is going to compete for those same recovery resources. So if you're overloading your recovery system, your strength training suffers, your muscle building slows, so you're working against yourself. And this is why I see people doing 6 days, 7 days of heavy training plus cardio, sleeping 6 hours a night, and wondering why they're not getting stronger. They're not allowing their body to actually build anything. So daily walking is ideal if you're in a muscle building phase. It supports your cardiovascular health, your insulin sensitivity, your overall well-being, without dipping into that recovery bucket. So keeping structured cardio moderate but intentional, at most 2 sessions per week of zone 2 is a smart maintenance level. More than that during a serious muscle building phase is going to work against your actual goals. I want to touch on something else that is incredibly important no matter what your goal is, and that's sleep and hydration. This is the foundation. So both hierarchies I just walked you through sit on a foundation, and without this foundation, neither hierarchy performs the way it's supposed to. So these are not bonus tips, these are non-negotiables. They're the difference between getting results and spinning your wheels. So sleep is the non-negotiable recovery window. And I want to share a study with you because I think it will genuinely change how you think about sleep. A study was conducted in 2021, and it found that 1 single night of sleep deprivation reduced muscle protein synthesis by 18% in healthy young adults. So let that sink in. 1 bad night's sleep created an 18% reduction in your body's ability to build and repair muscle. So the same study also measured a 24% drop in testosterone and a 21% increase in cortisol after 1 sleepless night. So 1 night, your testosterone is down 1/4, your cortisol is up 1/5. But here's the thing that really struck me. There's a study that was done that compared 2 groups of identical calorie restricted diets. So the same diet, the same calories, the same deficit. The group that was sleeping 8.5 hours per night lost primarily fat. The group that was limiting sleep to 5.5 hours per night lost 60% more muscle mass and 55% less fat. So same diet, same deficit, completely different body composition outcomes based solely on sleep duration. So let me translate this to real numbers. If you're trying to lose fat and you're sleeping 5.5 hours a night instead of 8.5, you're not just slowing your progress, you are actively working against yourself. You are burning muscle instead of fat. So here's what this means in practical terms. If you're in a fat loss phase and you're sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night, you're burning muscle, not fat, in a disproportionate rate. That means every time you lose a pound, more of it could be muscle than it should be. So if you're in a muscle building phase and you're chronically sleep deprived, you're showing up to build a house without any lumber arriving. So the training signal is there, the recovery window never comes, so the material never gets delivered. Muscle builds at rest. So sleep is when your pituitary gland releases the largest pulse of growth hormone. So growth hormone stimulates tissue repair, protein synthesis, and fat metabolism. So without adequate sleep, the hormonal surge is blunted. Your muscle misses the critical recovery window that all the training was designed to create. And here's the connection to everything else I talk about. So chronic sleep deprivation is one of the fastest ways to chronically elevate your cortisol, and chronically elevated cortisol drives fat storage, particularly around the midsection, and it drives muscle breakdown. So you cannot train or eat your way out of a sleep deficit. You have to sleep. There's no other thing you could do to compensate. So 7 to 9 hours a night is the recommendation. Consistent sleep and wake times. A wind down routine tells your nervous system it's safe to rest. So this is not a lifestyle preference. This is a physiological requirement for the results that you are chasing. So I personally wake up at 4 to 5 a.m. every day. I've been recently shifting my sleep a little bit later because I've been staying up later with the kids for summer, which means I go to bed at 8:30 or 9 most nights. That's a non-negotiable for me. For you, it might look different, but the principle is the same. We have to protect our sleep like we protect our training. So what does my wind down look like? I stop working at 3:30, 4 p.m. I go to the gym. We have dinner at 5:30 p.m. We start our kids' bedtime routine at 7:30 p.m. And when they're winding down for bedtime, I'm winding down. There's no screens, there's reading, sometimes meditation, stretching. My body knows it's time to sleep. I put on blue light blocking glasses, and by 9 p.m. I'm trying to sleep. So when I skip that routine, when I'm working late, or if I watch a movie with my husband, if we stay up late, I sleep worse. I wake up groggy, I feel weaker in the gym the next day, I'm more hungry, my food choices are worse because my willpower is depleted, everything suffers. But when I protect it, everything works well. The next huge needle mover is hydration, and this is the medium that runs everything in your body. So research shows that even 1% dehydration produces a measurable reduction in high-intensity performance and fatigue onset. So at 2% dehydration, muscular strength is reduced by 3 to 15%, and peak power output drops by 10 to 20%. Think about that. You prepare your nutrition, you protect your sleep, you plan your training, and then you show up mildly dehydrated and you perform at a fraction of your potential. So that's the reality for a significant percentage of people with every single session. Most people are chronically dehydrated, and even mild dehydration can increase cortisol, which signals the body to conserve energy and store fat. So elevated cortisol can also impair your thyroid hormone function, which slows your metabolism and reduces your calorie burn at rest. So dehydration is not just a performance issue, it leads to hormonal issues. It raises cortisol, it slows your metabolism, and it impairs fat loss. So here's the mechanism. When you're dehydrated, your kidneys cannot function optimally, which forces your liver to compensate. This diverts your liver's resources away from metabolizing fat efficiently, which slows your fat loss progress. So your liver's job is to convert stored fat into usable energy. Dehydration essentially takes your liver off that job and reassigns it to help your kidneys function. So that's not a small thing for anyone who's in a fat loss phase. So the practical target should be half your body weight in ounces at a minimum starting point. So if you weigh 180 pounds, that's 90 ounces of water a day. That's roughly 7 cups, and even more on training days. And here's the important part. Electrolytes matter, not just water. You can drink a gallon of water and still be dehydrated if you're not getting enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium in. So I front load my hydration in the morning before caffeine. I drink about 20 ounces of water when I first wake up, and that sets the tone for the rest of the day. Then I sip throughout the day, I drink my electrolytes, and I make sure that I'm getting enough water in. And when I'm dehydrated, my workouts feel different, my muscles cramp. When I am hydrated, I feel stronger, I recover faster, my energy is better, I can think more clearly. When I'm dehydrated, everything feels heavier and harder. So let's put this all together. I want to make sure you leave with a clear picture of how this all connects. If your goal is fat loss, your energy goes here in this order. First is nutrition. Every single day, non-negotiable. This is the engine. Everything else depends on staying in a deficit if your goal is fat loss. Second is going to be daily movement and walking. Build progressively up to 10,000 steps as a target. This is the multiplier. It adds up across every waking hour to help you burn calories so you can eat more and still lose body fat. Third is going to be structured cardio. Zone 2 as your primary tool. 2 sessions per week at most. HIIT used sparingly if you want to add that in if you like it, but only when stress and recovery is well managed. Fourth is strength training. 3 to 4 times per week, not optional. Not something you cut when you want to lose faster. This is the mechanism that protects your muscle and your metabolism. Then the foundation is going to be sleep and hydration. 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Half your body weight in water. And this is what makes all of the other levers work. Now, if your goal is muscle growth, first and second, co-equal is going to be nutrition and strength training. These are dual engines. You cannot compromise one for the other. You cannot build muscle without the stimulus. You cannot build muscle without the material. We need to eat at or above maintenance calories. We need to eat 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. And we need to train 3 to 4 times per week with progressive overload. The third is going to be daily movement with moderate cardio. So in a supportive but not primary role, we need to walk daily, maybe 2 sessions of cardio per week, but that's it. More than that during a serious muscle building phase needs to be justified by some reason, and most people can't justify that. The foundations are always going to be sleep and hydration. 7 to 9 hours of sleep, half your body weight at least in ounces of water, and this is where the actual building happens. So prioritize sleep first and foremost. The common mistake is not working hard enough, it's working hard on the wrong things in the wrong order. So I see guys grinding through HIIT, they're doing tons of cardio while eating in a massive deficit, sleeping 5 hours a night, and they're not building muscle. They're losing fat, losing muscle, and spinning their wheels. And then I see women doing everything right. They're training 5 days a week, they're eating healthy, they're doing cardio, but their priorities are all backwards and they're plateaued and stuck for months and then quitting. So your body's not broken, your hierarchy is just off. So now you know what the hierarchy should be. So here's what I want you to take from this. Results are not random. They follow a sequence. Nutrition drives body composition. Movement amplifies the deficit or supports recovery. Strength training protects and builds your muscle. Sleep is when all the work actually happens in your body. Hydration is the medium through which every other process runs. So when one of those is compromised, the whole system slows. When all of them are aligned, the body responds beautifully. Not perfectly, not immediately, but consistently and predictably over time. So you do not need to be perfect, but you need to understand the order and protect the foundations. So here's what I want you to do. Identify right now, are you trying to lose fat or build muscle, or are you trying to do both and achieve body recomposition? Once you know that, look at your current routine and ask myself, am I doing these things in the right order? Is my nutrition locked in? Are my steps where they need to be? Is my sleep solid? Usually you'll find that 1 or 2 things are a little bit off. Fix those first. If your goal is body recomposition, focus on the fat loss hierarchy with a slight deficit and increased walking. Make sure you're hitting enough protein and lifting heavily enough. But remember, don't try to overhaul everything. Pick the weakest link and make that stronger, then move to the next one, because that's how you build results. It's not by being perfect at everything. It's by being strategic about what matters most. It's by understanding that some things matter more than others. So the hierarchy exists. Your body is designed to respond to this hierarchy, and when you align your actions with physiology instead of fighting against it, everything else gets easier. So that's the promise. That's the reality. Now go build it. You've got this.